Ever since I did my last Skyrim episode, people have been asking me to make mead with juniper berries in it. I'm going to do you one better today. We're going to make all of the mead from scratch in Skyrim. Today, we're going to taste and learn to make mead. All right, so a couple months back, I did a little bit of research about making mead, just the basics, and also about the meads in Skyrim, and I thought I was going to have to develop all those recipes myself. And since I'm not a brewer or mead maker or vintner, that's not a great place for me to be because I'm probably going to make 50 batches of garbage before we get something good. Then I found out that there is this book, the Elder Scrolls Official Cookbook, and it's got all the meads in there. So these recipes come directly from this book. We just made them all. Made a couple of modifications. All right, so what we've got here in this is what the book calls quick mead, which is essentially a quick and simple mead that is like your basic building block for further meads. We fermented it, we moved it into this historically appropriate wooden barrel for aging, and continued fermentation. We had a duty for fermenting bubbly stuff in there. A valve. We had a valve on top of that until just before we shot
Airlock.
this. An airlock. Thank you. My mead consultant friend Newman is here today. We had an airlock on that up until about 5 seconds ago. And then we have Blackbriar, Honningbrew, I don't know what, Honningbrew is what I would want to say. But we've got Blackbriar, Honningbrew, and mead with juniper berries in it. I want to get into tasting this mead because we made this stuff a couple months ago now. But first, we must travel to the distant past through the mists and fogs of time to a time of 3 months ago when we brewed the mead. But I'm told it's not brewing, it's just making because it's not a grain process. Ooh. It's said that many a Nord's first nourishment is a sip of mead, even before tasting their mother's milk. Mead is in their blood as much as in their drinking horns, and everyone has his or her favorite variety. So grab your favorite drinking buddy. You'll be a lot happier and a lot warmer with some mead in your belly. Ha ha ha! Okay, so we're gonna make quick mead. We're gonna make a whole lot of quick mead in this here kettle, which is from NutriChef. We're gonna put a link right up here in the corner. I'm pretty impressed with this thing. I didn't pay a lot of money for it, but it's got like a big malt basket that we're not going to need for what we're doing today. It's computerized, it's programmable, it's got a pump in it for either recirculating or for pumping it off. That's pretty good. I don't think it was a lot of money. I don't know what else you need, really. It does, I think 8 gallons, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that'll do 8 gallons. So for this recipe, we're going to need some honey, we're going to need spring water, we're going to need additional ingredients, and that's what we're going to do with secondaries. So that's when we take the quick mead and we turn it into these other meads, which we're going to do in a minute. And some ale yeast. The yeast that we're going to use today is this Kivek, which is a Norwegian farmhouse ale yeast. We have scaled this recipe up to 5 gallons. So the basic recipe calls for 2 cups of honey, 6 to 8 cups of spring water, which is weird that there's a variance there, and 1 packet of ale yeast, about 1/4 ounce. We're gonna ramp that way up and make 8 gallons of this stuff, and then we're gonna ferment it in this wooden cask. So let's just talk about the basics of fermentation. The basics of fermentation is the beginnings of distillation, which is usually what How to Drink is concerned with. But today we're talking about fermentation. So we're gonna take water, we're gonna make it sweet. With mead, we're gonna make it sweet with honey. But if you were making beer or whiskey or ale or wine, you might use grapes. You might use barley, you might use wheat, you might use rye, you might use anything because there's sugars in those things, and if you malt them, you get them to express their sugars, then you can take those sugars and feed them to yeasts, which are tiny little funguses that will shit and piss alcohol all over your sweet water. They take the sweetness out, they replace it with alcohol. Some yeasts will make it more alcoholic, more time, more sweetness, there's all those things, right? That's the process of fermentation. The next process, if you were to take that fermented beer or barley wine or whatever, you take that, you throw that into a still, which takes the water out of the beer, throw it away, and what's left is more concentrated alcohol. That's the difference, fermentation, distillation. You probably already know that, but sometimes I feel like I should just explain the basics again and again. So this is really weird to me because I have a huge funhouse reflection of myself. It's very distracting on this. I kind of want to soap it so I don't have to look at myself being all like, ugh. So we're gonna add 3 gallons of spring water here, 2 gallons of spring water here. We're gonna bring this up to about 150 degrees just to pasteurize it. We're gonna add our honey. We're gonna pump it out over to here. We're gonna add that 3 gallons to these 2 gallons, which will bring the temperature down. Then we're gonna throw yeast in it. The brewers like to call that pitching the yeast. You pitch the yeast in there. We're gonna bung it not so tight. We're gonna put a one-way valve on it. I don't know what you call that thing, a burper. What is it called?
Oh, airlock.
An airlock. We're gonna airlock this. We're gonna let it ferment in there for, I don't know, between 1 and 3 months. And when it's done, we will have a fresh batch of quick mead. It's quick to make. It's not quick to ferment.
What does the airlock allow you to do?
So the yeasts, not only do they piss and shit alcohol into your sweet water, they also fart carbon dioxide, and you don't want it to explode. So you want to make it so that the carbon dioxide farts can get out, but not let anything else in, so that it doesn't turn into a Dutch oven in there. If it turns into too much of a Dutch oven, poof, it'll explode. You'll have it fizzing and foaming everywhere. It'll be a nightmare. We want to let the gases out. So for step 1, I'm going to need 3 gallons of this spring water that we bought.
That's actually how the Vikings got it too.
Poland, Maine is where the Vikings got their spring water. I wish I came in here with like olive wood, hand-spun bowls of water that I collected from water dripping off of a mossy spring, but I didn't.
Oh. Didn't quite make it over
Almost 1 gallon.
If anyone wants to do it like this, their inclination will then be to top off the barrel. Don't do that, otherwise it's gonna flow out through the airlock.
You want some headspace in there. All right. We hit 3 gallons perfectly despite my splash that everybody gave me a hard time about. Okay, so we've got this heating up. It's gonna head its way up to 150 degrees Fahrenheit. We're gonna pasteurize it, we're gonna add our honey. That's good too, because the honey is like thick and you want it, if you pour it into cold, it takes a lot more work to integrate it. You want it to be kind of hot. So while that's working its way up, I'm gonna throw my next 2 gallons of water into here for our total 5-gallon batch. And the reason we're doing that is because we wanna reduce the temperature anyway. There's nothing special that happens in here except for honeyfying water. Honestly, you could just shake this up. I have seen plenty of mead making recipes that involve taking honey and water and just shaking them together. We're just happen to be using this because honestly, how to drink is investing in a brewing future. 2 gallons, count them, 2 gallons to this barrel. We're up to 24 degrees Celsius here, and we're just gonna wait for it to get hot. I kind of think at that point we should call cut and come back to this when it is hot. All right, so my temperature right now is 152, so I'm ready to add my honey. Each of these juggos of honey is 5 pounds, and we want to add 15 pounds of honey to our 3 gallons are here, which will then join the 2 gallons here for 15 pounds of honey for 5 gallons of water. You know what? Honey's delicious. If I was an ancient person and I found some honey, I'd probably invent a god to explain that one too. It seems miraculous. Okay, here we go, honey.
Unfiltered wildflower honey.
Now, our brew lord, Mr. Newman, told me keep the heater on because we're going to want to get it back up to temperature. The honey's going to drop the temperature, and already we're at 132, so he's not wrong. We're going to wait for that to get back up to 150 degrees, and we'll add the rest of our honey, which is slowly collecting. Oh, we're going to stir it though. I'm going to stir that up to incorporate everything. Get our honey mixed. This honey, this mead might come out a little macaroni and cheesy.
Oh, it wasn't washed off?
I don't know if it was. I've got plenty of honey collected here that we didn't get in before. I want to add the rest of my honey. So just to get the last of our honey, we're going to let a little of this into each one of these. We're going to shake it up and rinse it out. Now I'll wash myself like a raccoon. This is ready now. That's the whole shebang. This is kind of overkill for this job. All we really had to do was heat it up. But if you've got to heat 3 gallons of water and add honey to it, you kind of want something like this anyway, right? So it made my life a lot easier to have this. I think in the future, we'll be using this to make some cider on the show. Maybe How to Drink will get into making beer. I don't know. Let me know what you wanted me to do in the comments. It helps. Anyway, so now, even though all we've really done is add water, heat it up, and mix it with honey, it's ready to come out of here. And to do that, we're going to attach this hose. And by the way, for those of you who are asking, yes, all of this has been sanitized with Sanistar. Bloop, away she goes. Okay, so we're transferring this into our barrel that's got 2 gallons of room temperature water in it, so it's gonna drop the temperature, and then we'll be able to pitch our yeast. That's not good.
Oh shit, it's all over the equipment.
We had a little bit too much pressure there, so we're gonna use a funnel now and see if this is a little bit better. And I can use this valve to regulate my flow, supposedly. Still draining.
No, it's
Put that over the top of the bucket. All right, so we made too much mead. We've overfilled this barrel a little bit, and then on top of that, you notice there's a lot of wax on here. This barrel wants to leak, and it was leaking really badly from the top here. That's why we hastily hit cut. This is paraffin wax that's been heated up on a stove, and I'm gonna paint it on there with a paintbrush to kind of seal it a little bit better. Paraffin wax is also very useful for a fire starting tool, so be careful with that. All right, so my brewmaster told me to grab this here graduated cylinder and take a specific gravity measurement of what we've got here in this keg before we add our yeast and before it ferments so that we can compare it to our future specific gravity. So we're gonna do that. To do that, I have to kind of take this thing and point it at me so I can get this underneath the keg. Trust me, I am filling it from the keg. We're not gonna have a pretty shot for this. There's just no way for me to rig up for it. Okay, that's enough, he says. All right, there we go. We got our great big urine sample. Our great big mead sample. So this is a hydrometer. It's basically a vacuum filled with a little bit of carefully measured lead. It's going to sink into our fluid to a certain thing where the fluid line is. We're going to take a reading from, and that will tell us the specific gravity of the fluid, which we expect to be about 1.9. And if I recall, you're supposed to spin it. It's going to be a little bit of a lower proof batch. And if you're not familiar, no, we can't just add more yeast or whatever because there's just only so much sugar in there for the yeast to eat. I'm gonna drink some. It's delicious, hot honey water. It will give me a diabetic coma. So according to our math, this is gonna work out to be somewhere between 8 and 11% alcohol by volume by the time we're done fermenting. Let's add our yeast. So we're gonna add this entire packet of premium Kvyek ale yeast. So I wanna add about 100 milliliters of water to this. I don't think it's rocket science. I'm gonna use the same water we brewed with. I'm gonna open up this whole packet. Dump the whole packet of Kvyek yeast in. Give that a good stir. And we're gonna wait 5 minutes for it to kind of activate. So there's a lot of different kinds of yeast out there. There's bread yeast, there's pizza yeast, there's brewer's yeast. There's a lot of different kinds of yeasts out there. We went with this Kvyek ale yeast because it's good for brewing kind of hot or warm. It's a Norwegian yeast, which felt really appropriate to the Nords, the Skyrim setting. It fit the bill for what we wanted to do here. All right, so now I'm gonna pitch my yeast into our barrel. And this is our airlock, which I don't know what they would have done in Viking times, but for us, this is the trick. We're gonna put that right in there. And there you go, now it's airlocked, and now it's gonna start making mead. So in 1 to 3 months' time, this will be delicious mead ready to drink. Anyway, I'm going to move this giant barrel, a moderate sized barrel. Here we go, mead. Ooh, it comes out there quick. A little cloudy, I like that. Here we go, this is the quick mead from the Elder Scrolls official cookbook. That's really dry. That is dry, dry, dry. Almost like a light beer, like a Kolsch, but a little bit more bitter, like a Kolsch with some extra grapefruit or hops notes. There's no hops in this. It doesn't have any of that funkiness, but it does have a bright and tart flavor. I would say it's almost citrusy and oaky. I like it, it's really good, it's drinkable. It is a little cloudy. Oh, that's interesting. It was kind of a funky turn there that I actually really liked. I'm not much of a brewer. But I can imagine that a brew lord would taste that and say, maybe this is overaged or something. I don't know, but I like it, honestly, what just happened there. Is that a sour thing, Newman?
I'll have to try it.
A taste for my lord of the brew.
I haven't had it in a while.
No, please. And also for Meredith. He's not happy. He doesn't love his mead. What are you thinking?
I told you I liked it when I was young, but yeah, it totally drops into almost like a beer.
Yeah.
It's interesting. That has moved around a lot, that barrel.
You think it's
It might have also kind of sloshed it up a little bit.
Okay. So this quick mead made a fairly dry mead. I like it. It's crisp, bright, citrusy. I would say it tastes of grapefruit peels and something adjacent to hops with former ghosts of honey. Like the honey has been eaten. I talk about this a lot. If you took a raspberry and sucked all of the sweetness out of a raspberry, you might taste something that tastes distantly like a raspberry, but without that sweetness, you're gonna have a really hard time recognizing it as a raspberry immediately or a strawberry or whatever. Similar, the honey's in there, the notes of the honey, some of the flavoring things of the honey, but none of the sweetness. So it doesn't really register as honey the same way. It's nice. It's a light, dry wine. Less dry than a dry white wine by far. It's much more like a beer. It's a lot like a flat beer, which I actually happen to like. All right, so we've got our quick mead here. It's sitting on top of a thing that we call an apple box. And these come in different sizes on a film set. We use these to make things such as Tom Cruise taller. Mission accomplished! So what we want to do is each of these little barrels is going to get the ingredients to make one of the subtypes of mead, Honningbrew, Blackbriar, Juniper Mead, and we're going to put those little ingredients in here and add to it our quick mead and then set them aside, and in a week, month, whatever, they will be that recipe. That's the idea. What's in these will become what's in those. Time. So the first thing we're going to make is Honningbrew Mead. And I don't need to unbung that. By the way, if you've ever wondered about Beavis's bunghole, this is a bung, this is a bunghole. Don't put TP in your bunghole.
TP for my bunghole?
How many people know who Beavis is anymore? Or that he has a bunghole and he needs TP for it? I am the great Cornholio! I need TP for my bunghole. So the first thing that goes into here is going to be a tablespoon of lavender. I'm going to hold off on that. First thing I'm going to do is take a half an apple. And remember, I got to get it through this tiny little hole. So I'm going to chop this sucker up really small. Do I care about the seeds? No. Is someone in the comments going to tell me, oh my God, you use the seeds, you're going to get cyanide poisoning? Without fail. Do I care about that person's opinion? Not even a little bit. So we're just going to make matchsticks. Now this recipe calls for red apple, non-specific. And what we have here is a red delicious. I think we're going with something a little bit more acid, a little bit more tart. There's a part of me that wants to just throw some malic acid in here to go with it. I'm not going to do that though. We're going to stick to the book. All right, so in goes my matchsticks of apples. It's going to take me a minute because they're very tiny. And they got to go through a tiny hole. Okay, we got our apples in there. It took forever. Now I want 1 inch of fresh ginger, peeled and sliced. That's about 1 inch, so I'm going to peel that. They always say that, 1 inch. How thick is my ginger? Maybe I have really thick ginger and a 1 inch is more ginger. Maybe you have a really thin ginger and you need a lot more. The other thing about ginger is that it's not really the size of the ginger, I've been told, it's how you use it. So, I don't know. I want to slice this up so it'll fit through my bung. Once again, we're making some matchsticks here. In goes my ginger. Putting ginger in your bunghole, I mean, in some communities, that's a thing people do for fun. But we're just doing it to make some mead, which is a different kind of fun. Nobody should know about that. But, you know, I know a lot of things because I've been on the internet a long, long time. We want a tablespoon of culinary lavender. Whoa, that is powerful smells. I got a pretty good idea what a tablespoon looks like. It's going to be about 3 of these. I've made this mistake before. I've definitely used non-culinary lavender for culinary purposes. Don't be like me. Use culinary lavender, which is available right here in the link and in the pinned comment below and all that stuff. And if you buy it from my link so that How to Drink can keep the lights on. All of our ingredients are in here except for one, the most important one, which is our mead. Let's fill this up with mead and hope we don't overflow it too badly. Let me see what we got here. Oh yeah, that's right where I want it to be. Bung it tight. 1 to 3 weeks, we should start to see some real good flavor infusions here. Taste it, see where you like it. Stop it and pour it off and put it into something else when you want. Basically what's in there is a bunch of like tea bag stuff, and you can take it off there whenever you want and freeze it in time. There's really no rules there. The books probably say something different, but they're working from the assumption that you're doing a much younger, less aged mead. Do that too, that's all fine too. It might be a science, but it's not science. All right, that batch is done. I'm psyched. Let's see how it is. So here we go with the Honningbrew Mead, which has cinnamon, lavender, and apples added to the quick mead. I don't know any other Nord toasts. You might want to look that one up for me. Look, that's all they ever say in the game is to Ulfric Stormcloak. All 8 voice actors who appear in Skyrim. Okay, so I can taste the tartness of the quick mead right away. I get black pepper. I get a strong black pepper note on that. Let me go again. Hold on a second. Oh, wow. Very woody. So here's the thing. We let these age and ferment a little longer than the book would advise. So our yeasts here have had a really long time to eat every ounce of sugar that is in these. And if you follow the book, you're probably going to end up with a sweeter result, a little more desserty result. So in the interest of trying to taste this as I think the book would intend it, I'm going to back sweeten these a little bit with just some honey. Not much, just like a bar spoon or something like that.
Back sweetening is super common, by the way.
Yeah.
Meads, ciders, even wines.
Yeah, fining. We're going to fine it with a little honey. My mead consultant back there is nodding in agreement. This is the way to do it. Here we go. Just a little honey. More than enough, I think. Like I said, I'm not a mead expert. We're flying by the seat of our pants. But I want to do this because I think that there's other flavors in there that will come to life with a little extra sweetness. So, a minute ago, I was getting a lot of citrus, a lot of grapefruit, black pepper, tannins, like woodsy, oaky flavors. These small barrels, which is what we did this secondary in, this infusion, if you will, they will age really fast. These will age a little bit slower. Great big barrels full of whiskey. They take years and years and years to age, right? So it's just about surface area to volume. So I think that that's what I was tasting there. There was like some earthy notes. I like that. I thought this was great the way it was. I like the flavor of black pepper. So I'm in the interest of science, I'm trying to take this thing a little bit back in time by putting a little bit of sweetness back into it. Here we go. Okay, that's cool. I like that. I like sugar. But now you can really taste the honey, of course. But it also brings out the apple, like dry, kind of almost cider apples. It does also accentuate a kind of funkiness to it. I mean, I think that that's probably something that the yeast has done in there. So we wanted to put these on oak to kind of take them back to a sort of Viking or medieval age, a Skyrim age, if you will. So we're cheating a little bit on that. Maybe that's not what the recipe would have you do. I think the recipes call for a glass carboy, a little bit different than aging on wood. And so there is some of that funky, woodsy, old barn kind of flavors in there. I like it a lot. I've had like 2 sour ales in my whole life, and I think that there are flavors here that might show up in a sour.
There's no reason why it wouldn't have some farmhouse funk to it.
It does. Try it out.
You nailed it though, exactly. It's been sitting there so like, oh, the sugars are gone. And honey in particular, because it's basically just straight up bee spit sugar.
Bee spit sugar.
It ferments pretty thoroughly, like all the way through.
I talked about this last time we did mead on the show. I always think of mead as being the default that the adventuring party gets to
100%,
when
yeah.
they go to the tavern. But the thing you forget about that is that the adventuring party is coming back with pockets full of gold. Mead is not the cheap way to get drunk, right? Like, bees only make so much honey, and you need quite a bit of it to make a sizable amount, a commercial amount of mead. So this was like, you drink mead in Valhalla when you were dead.
Also mentioned in Chaucer's work. All that kind of gets threaded into all of what we want to pretend is like medieval shit.
Chaucer talked a lot about mead.
He mentions it.
My mead consultant happens to also be a high school teacher, so there we go. Schooling me on schoolings. I'm still getting the black pepper, but it is tempered way down. And actually, I think I kind of want to wind up somewhere in between there, because the black pepper to me was super cool. Now I'm really getting apples, like a red, fresh apple for sure. I love that. A little bit of extra sweetness, and I mean very little. Think about off the top of my head and what I put on this glass. I think that 5 to 8 ounces of honey for this tiny barrel would probably be the right amount. So if you're gonna age these meads in this book the way that we have done here on wood, consider putting a little bit more honey in them when they're done. Toasted barrels, by the way, not char. That's cool. I like that a lot. That's really good. Okay, Honningbrew. Let's see how your enemy Blackbriar does. All right, so 1 to 2 tablespoons of dried rose hips. I am just gonna eyeball that. Somebody's gonna say in the comments like, dude, why are you so lazy? Why don't you get a tablespoon? Because it doesn't matter. There's so many variables here that to just like pick one random variable and be like, that's the one I'm gonna make sure we're very, very carefully controlled on. This is not like a clean place. There's all kinds of bacteria and yeasts floating around. There's all kinds of dust. My hands aren't perfectly clean. But the 1 to 2 tablespoons of dried rose hips, we're not gonna screw around on that. You're kidding yourself if you think you've got data. All you have is noise. I'm gonna put my funnel in. I'm gonna put a half a teaspoon thereabouts of ground clove in there. There you go, half a teaspoon of ground clove. Yes, it's sitting in the funnel, but it doesn't matter because everything in that funnel is gonna get rinsed in there when we dump it full of mead. This is a whole cinnamon stick. It's a good cinnamon stick. This is Ceylon instead of cassia cinnamon. That's the ones you should be using. It's very friable. Like you could rip this apart very easily. It's not like a piece of wood like that. It has a very, very bright and wonderful flavor. If anything calls for cinnamon, this is what I would use. I'm going to put it in there, but I'm gonna kind of break it up as I go. No, I'm not. I'm just going to accidentally drop it and the whole thing is going to go in. So there it is. It's in there. I'm going to take 8 blackberries and kind of muddle them up in my thing here. So we want 6 ounces of crushed blackberries into the funnel. Some of it's going to go down. Some of it's not. It doesn't matter. As long as we crush it all up, when we dump the mead in, it'll do the rest for us. All right, I'm going to add a pinch of salt. I'm using fancy salt. Now I'm going to dump my mead. Boop. There she goes. Let's let it fly, baby. There we go, perfect. And that is our Blackbriar Mead. Just bung it tight, same as the other one. I'm gonna wait, a month, maybe 3 months, taste it as I go, back sweeten it because this is really dried out already. Maybe I'll give it a little shake here and there. That's it, it's ready to go. And I really forget which mead brewery was the good guy in that storyline because there's a quest in the game where you gotta pick a side. I guess it's one of the few times you gotta pick sides. You gotta pick a side in that game. It's either Blackbriar or Honningbrew. and then the other meadery goes out of business, and one of them wins. And I forget who was one of them definitively the good guys, were they just sort of morally gray? I don't know. Hit me up in the comments. This is the Blackbriar, cinnamon, clove, blackberries, rose hips, and a dash of salt. It occurs to me, I don't know what a rose hip is, really, to be honest. I hear them called for a lot. So here are some rose hips. Oh, they look like cranberries. They look like dried cranberries. What part of the rose is the hip? On a rose, is the hip bone connected to the leg bone? I don't know. Let's find out. Okay. They chew like rocks. They taste like distantly like rose. Oh my God. I'm gonna break a tooth on them. These are not for eating. I've had the eaten style of rose hips before. Someone turned them into rocks. Also, by the way, all of these kegs that we bought, these wooden ones, they're covered in wax because no amount of soaking would stop them from leaking. They just wanted to leak. So I'd love to give you a link to buy these, but I have a hard time recommending them. I suppose you could wax them up. Well, with that caveat, have at them. Oh wow, totally different color. The rose hips really lended a color though. That's cool to see that
Well, and the blackberries.
dramatic difference. Oh, and the blackberry, yeah. Okay, here we go. That spigot was a little clogged, so do it old school. Arr, there we go.
Got some stuff in it too.
Yeah, we did get some chunkies out of there. All right. You know what? We got some wax though. I do want to flip that out. Thankfully, wax floats. There we have Blackbriar Mead. First off, our blackberry, rose hip, everything else infusion here, remarkably different color, right? We get the red immediately. I mean, this looks like Viking blood, which has hibiscus in it. Let's see how this came out. Oh, that tastes like a chai tea. You get the cardamom, strong and powerful. Very, very dry, just like the others. It's been in the barrels probably longer than it wants to be, right? Like it might have been better as a younger one, but there's a caveat there. We have a really strong cardamom infusion. There's a lot of the rose hip is in here. A lot of the blackberry has gotten in here. That takes time. You also got a lot of the oak. So it's not weird if you're gonna do all those infusions and also all of the aging to back sweeten it, I am told by my mead consultant. Oh, what was that? Oh shit, there was like a whole this one's interesting to me. I like this one better. It has more evolution, or I think that certainly with a little sweetness, it's gonna have a lot more evolution. There was a very late arriving tasting note, like way late. Let's see if I can repeat that. Cardamom, That's funny too, because I don't usually think I like cardamom all that much, but I like it here. I'm waiting. I'll let you know if it comes back. We're gonna try a little back sweetening on this recipe. That's probably too much. And I got rose hips floating around in there or something, I don't know. Maybe I want to pop them out. Little balls of mold. Actually, I think that they are blackberry parts. All right, here we go. Oh, that's my mead. I love that. It's almost like a chai latte kind of thing. I want you guys to try this too. You get much less intense cardamom now. It's really nice all the way through. You're also getting, there was another note in there I'm trying to remember, hold on. Honestly, I don't know if I'm getting the flavor of blackberries and rose hips. It's part of me that wonders if the blackberries, because not a lot of them, are in there because it's Blackbriar Mead and it's like a namesake kind of thing and you want to put them in there for theme and color. Cardamom's a lot more powerful a flavor than rose hips. Like just rose hips aren't that oomphy. I'm really in love with the cardamom. To me, it's like surprised that cardamom mead is that good. I think we've tasted the hell out of this goddamn thing, as you can see by the glass. Between the two, I really like the Blackbriar Mead. I'm still getting some peppery notes, but I think that's part of the cardamom. I'm really enjoying what the cardamom does in the mead with the honey. Oh, there it is. I am getting a rose note. I thought that there was a very late arriving note. It's subtle. It builds. It builds up. If you didn't add the back sweetening, I don't think you would ever detect the rose. The rose really, it needs to be sweetened up because flowers are sweet. You need to be able to recognize the smell of a flower is sweet. Your brain needs to be able to connect the thing that your mouth is tasting to a memory for you to be able to taste it. Your memory of roses, of flowers is sweet smells. Without sweetness in it, you're gonna have a really hard time making that connection and saying, oh, rose hips. Now you sweeten it up a little bit. You can bring that rose out, not of the glass, but of your mind. Ooh, man, that's beautiful. This is poetry of tasting. I spun that shit out right out of my ass. It's true, though. It is all true. I've never put it better. Frame that one. And now we're going to make mead with juniper berries. Okay, so I need 2 tablespoons of crushed juniper. I'm going to add it to this mortar and pestle because it happens to be the whole juniper. I'm just going to grind that up. Woo, what a powerful smell. The whole room smells like gin. Okay, 2 teaspoons of dried yarrow and 1 tablespoon of dried hibiscus. That's it. That's the whole ingredient package other than the mead. I'm just going to put that into the funnel. Some of the stuff is stuck because those juniper beads were fresh. I mean, they were not super fresh, but they weren't dry either. And we have this like kind of pulpy sort of tea here, and I'm going to use my spoon to sort of help it go. We're just going to work that in there, and it's just rinsing right in. Just waiting for it to fill up. Oh yeah, we still have plenty of mead in there.
Ooh, now I got it. I just got a whiff of juniper.
All right, that's really full. Bung it up. And again, wait 1 to 3 months and see how it goes. Try it along the way if you want. Yar, here we go. So, cool color, nice flow. This guy's prostate is looking great. So this is the Juniper Berry Mead, famous from Skyrim. Juniper berries, yarrow, and dried hibiscus. Hibiscus is, of course, giving us our color. I don't smell any. Oh, wow. I thought I didn't smell. Maybe I smell the yarrow? Maybe I smell the juniper. I don't know. It's an interesting kind of note to it. And now I'm saying piney. It's probably the juniper. Wow, that is wildly different. That has a much more piney kind of note to it. It's much more bright, much more foresty, woodsy, but not earthy, but like the canopy of the woods. It's walking through a conifer forest on a fresh spring day with the moss around you and the light streaming in and the birds in the distance going, caw, caw, like that. Let's back sweeten it though. Let's just see what it tastes like with a little extra. That's quite a bit of honey, actually. Probably too much. Yeah, we can fix that, by the way. Honey will sit on the bottom. It needs aggressive stirring. If I want less honey than I poured, leave more of it on the bottom.
That might be what people would consider like a methaglin. It's like a mead, a spiced mead without so much on the fruit aspect of it.
Okay.
Anytime you add stuff to mead, they come up with a different name for it.
Yeah, so it was really dry, like dried woods, kindling kind of flavors before. With the sweetening in it, you really get this lush forest vibe. I really like this one too. Let me thin it back out because that might almost be too much. Did you check the proof on these?
Yeah, they're about 12%.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, it feels like it. All right, so a little less sweetness now. That's on the money. Really good evolution there. Ooh, I love that. That's tough to call. I don't know. I might like this one the best. I think that's why it's the first one they talk about in the game. This is great. Do I taste juniper? It doesn't taste anything like gin. And I'm comparing it to like a conifer forest. I know a lot of people say that gin tastes like pine oil or something like that. It doesn't taste piney either. It tastes like cedar. It tastes like the experience of being around a cedar forest. Moss, fresh spring water. I don't know, I like this one a lot. Not very citrusy, woodsy. Not earthy, woodsy. That's the best description I can give you. It's not fruity either. Maybe it's woodsy because of the juniper and the hibiscus combining. I do get a late arriving, what I think is a hibiscus note, and it does have some aging in it. For sure. I mean, obviously it does. You can taste a little bit of the actual wood flavors, which don't really probably taste like the smell of like fresh cut wood. It's a little bit different than that. It's a deeper taste. It's a funkier taste. I don't want to say it's a moldier taste, but it kind of is in a lot of ways. You know, in a high proof spirit like whiskey or bourbon, you're dealing with very different chemicals. And so aging there will express and present differently than aging in a beer or a wine or a mead for that matter. It's a different thing. Do you want to try this? Come and get it before I finish it. What do y'all think?
For me, the other one was nicer, but this is not terrible.
Oh, I de-sweetened this one though.
This one tastes more like wine.
Yeah, sure, I would say that. I could see
I
it
get
being-
like grape wine.
You get grapes? in
Not well. I get like white wine notes. Or
Okay.
rosé even.
that? Ooh.
Of all three of them, well, 4 of them that we've had, they're all legit.
They're all very good. I really hope you enjoyed this tour through mead making and also the lands of Skyrim, Tamriel, the Elder Scrolls, if you will. I played a lot of Skyrim when it came out. I haven't replayed it, like I said before. But fun game, really cool. I like the mods. The mods are really fun. And other than that, I want to say a huge shout out and thank you to Chelsea Monroe Castle for writing the book, the official Elder Scrolls Cookbook. Very important and instrumental, actually, in this episode's creation. So thank you, Chelsea. And I'll see you guys next time on another episode of How to Drink. In the meantime, you will find me on TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, and Patreon. That's the important one. That's the one where I get the money. And those places are appearing right before your very eyes. Making the show for like 7 years of bleeding I've poured into this thing. And if you liked this episode, there's more just like it. Here they are appearing before your very eyes. 4 sumptuous links for you to sink your delicious little teeth into and have all the good linky juice run down your lips and off your chin, and you have to sup it up with some toast and put it back into your mouth. I don't know. Whatever the olden-timey Skyrimmers did. I will see you very soon in another episode of HD, and until then, good night and good luck. I'm Greg. Thank you. Goodbye. I've had a lot of mead today. I'm pretty drunk.
I am tired, and would rather suckle on this flagon of mead.